This story is usually told as the moment humanity disobeyed. That's not true. The most dangerous moment comes later. After the fruit, after the realization, after the silence settles. The real fracture doesn't happen when they eat. It happens when they are asked a simple question, and no one answers it honestly. Because this story is not about temptation, it's about responsibility, and how quickly humans learn to escape it. Most people think the fall is about desire. But if that were true, the story would end with the act. It doesn't. It slows down. It lingers, as if the act itself is almost secondary, as if the text is waiting for something else to happen. The scene is disturbingly calm. No fire, no thunder, no immediate punishment. Just two people standing inside a world that suddenly feels different. The text says they realize they are naked. This is usually explained as shame. But shame alone doesn't explain what follows. Because shame hides. And they hide before they are accused, which suggests something deeper. They don't just feel exposed, they feel seen. Not physically, morally. For the first time, they understand something irreversible. They chose. And that choice now exists independently of them. It can't be explained away. It can't be undone. And that realization is unbearable. So they hide. Not from danger, from accountability. That detail changes everything. Then comes the voice. Where are you? Most interpretations treat this as a literal question. But the story already knows where they are. This is not about location. It's about position. Where are you now? Inside the choice you made. Inside its consequences. Inside yourself. It's an opening, an invitation, a moment before the narrative locks into place. This is where the story could have gone differently, and that's why this moment matters so much. The question sharpens. Have you eaten from the tree? There is no denial possible. The knowledge is already visible. The moment requires only one thing: ownership. Nothing more, nothing less. And then comes the response. The woman you gave me. She gave me the fruit. Slow this sentence down, because it's doing something extraordinary. He does not deny the act. He does not deny awareness. He denies authorship. Responsibility is split into parts and redistributed. First to her, then upward. The woman you gave me. This is not panic. This is strategy. In a single sentence, responsibility is displaced across the system. Agency dissolves, and blame is born. This is the first time in the narrative that a human refuses to stand alone with a choice. And that refusal matters more than the choice itself. Because once responsibility becomes transferable, it becomes negotiable. And once it becomes negotiable, it disappears. This is not the lie of falsehood. It's the lie of insulation. I did it, but not really. And that sentence has echoed through history ever since. Then the focus shifts. What is this you have done? Same structure, same opportunity, same moment of exposure. And the response mirrors the first. The serpent deceived me. Again, no denial. Again, no ownership. Just explanation. Context. Influence. Pressure. This is important, because deception is real. Influence is real. Power dynamics exist. But the story is not denying those things. It's showing how quickly they become shields, how easily explanation replaces responsibility. Here's a detail almost no one talks about. The serpent is never questioned. No interrogation, no dialogue, no curiosity. The narrative doesn't care about the manipulator. It cares about the human response. Because manipulation only matters if participation follows. And that is the uncomfortable truth the story refuses to soften. At this point, something subtle but critical happens. The questions stop. There is no debate, no correction, no reassurance, no attempt to extract a better answer. The narrative simply moves forward. Consequences begin, which suggests something chilling. The problem was not ignorance. The problem was not curiosity. The problem was not even disobedience. The problem was what humans revealed about themselves when confronted. That their first instinct was not truth. It was self-protection. And once that instinct appears, it never leaves. The consequences themselves are revealing. They are not arbitrary punishments. They are structural changes. The serpent is reduced. The woman is told that intimacy will involve pain. The man is told that work will become exhausting. These are not curses shouted in anger. They are descriptions. Relational strain, existential resistance. Life becomes heavier, not because rules were broken, but because responsibility was fractured. Once actions are no longer owned, reality stops cooperating. Think about this carefully. Nothing external attacks them. The ground doesn't turn hostile out of vengeance. It becomes resistant, unresponsive, as if the world itself no longer trusts them. Because trust requires ownership, and ownership was just abandoned. This is where the story stops being ancient, because this pattern is everywhere. Every institution under investigation, every system exposed, every collapse followed by the same language. Mistakes were made. Notice how that sentence works. Something happened, but no one did it. It acknowledges failure while protecting identity. Exactly what happens here. Watch modern power under pressure. Scandals erupt. Crises unfold. Apologies are issued. Processes are reviewed. But responsibility dissolves into structures, cultures, circumstances. Language becomes abstract, passive, impersonal. Not because people don't know, but because ownership is dangerous. And this story already showed us why. Now look closer to home. Personal relationships. Conflicts rarely end with, "I was wrong." They end with explanations, backgrounds, trauma histories, intentions, context. These things may all be true, but they function as shields. The goal is not truth, it's survival. And the cost is always the same. Distance, resentment, emotional exile. Because exile in this story is not geographic, it's psychological. They are not simply removed from a place. They are removed from immediacy, from innocence, from the ability to exist without constant self-justification. Once responsibility fractures, every interaction becomes defensive. Life becomes something you manage, not something you inhabit. And now the structure reveals itself. No one is struck dead. No immediate violence occurs. The system continues, but it is damaged. Which leads directly to the next story. Cain and Abel. Because once responsibility is avoided, resentment grows. When outcomes feel unfair and guilt has no owner, anger looks for a target, and violence becomes possible. Then comes Babel. Because when blame spreads, coordination turns into control. Unity becomes dangerous. Not because humans cooperate, but because no one accepts limits. Control feels safer than accountability. Then comes the flood. Because systems that cannot accept fault eventually decide the world itself is the problem. When responsibility disappears, elimination replaces correction. not reform. Replacement. All of that begins here. Not with a fruit, with a refusal. The refusal to stand alone with one's own decision. The first lie is not spoken outwardly. It's internal. I am not the source of this. And everything after that is escalation. Here is the most disturbing part of the story. No one corrects them. No one says, "You're lying to yourself." The narrative simply moves on, as if to say, once this pattern appears, it no longer needs enforcement. Humans will repeat it automatically, across families, across institutions, across civilizations. And here is the question the story never answers. What would have happened if the response had been different? If someone had said, "I chose," nothing else. No justification, no redirection, no defense, just ownership. The text is silent, and that silence matters. Because maybe the story isn't about what happened, it's about what keeps happening. Every time blame feels safer than truth. Every time explanation replaces responsibility. Every time survival matters more than integrity. The first lie was not disobedience. It was self-protection. And it worked. They survived. But something else was lost. The ability to stand fully inside one's own actions. And once that ability disappears, the world changes shape. Slowly. Quietly. Inevitably. This story doesn't warn us about curiosity. It warns us about evasion. About what happens when humans learn to escape themselves. Because once responsibility is deferred, it never stays deferred. It moves. It accumulates. And eventually, it explodes somewhere else. The story never tells us how to fix this. It just shows us where it began, and leaves us there. Still exposed. Still uncomfortable. Still deciding how we would answer the question.